All right. Well, I'm back with another YouTube video, and this time, or actually, it'll be for the second video in a row. This will be about owls. If you saw my previous video, it was just a quick thing about the northern pygmy owls that I saw up or near or around lions. I think that that location got leaked out pretty good, so I think anybody who ever wanted to go see those pygmy owls has probably seen them by now. But yeah, so then I wanted to focus on, I guess it was mid-March, I really decided to focus on finding owls around town. And particularly what I was looking for was I wanted to find nesting owls because I remember seeing last year, right around this time in the spring, people posting a bunch of owl pictures of little baby owlets. And I just thought, oh, that would be amazing. But I've never focused really on ever trying to find owls. Owls are just one of those things where I figured I'd probably just see them when I was out and about doing other photography, and I'd be like, oh, cool, an owl. But I've never really like targeted them or really focused in on trying to find them. So that's what I did. And it was a lot of searching and a lot of failure and a lot of chasing down tips that didn't pan out, or oh, you just missed him, he was just here. And but again, the challenge was finding where they were actually nesting, not just one happened to be in a park one day. I actually was really trying to find nesting owls, and it was a struggle, and there was a lot of legwork, a lot of going places and walking around, and just knowing it's like, oh, I know they're here, but I just can't find them. In particular, I went out to Cheese Ranch Park in Highlands Ranch at least 3 or 4 times, at different times during the day. And I know they're out there, but I could not find them. So if you have any hot tips on Cheese Ranch Park in Highlands Ranch, yeah, send me a message. But I did end up finding 2 different nesting sites. So once I found those 2, I kind of stopped searching and just kind of focused on those 2 nesting sites. So that's what I wanted to show in this video. It's just kind of the footage I got, and both nests ended up having owlets in them. And one was in Denver and one was in Jefferson County. And I think they're a good sort of case study because they're both very different from each other. And yeah, so I just wanted to show some of the photos I got and some of the footage from each different nesting site. And also, I do have a little bit of unfinished business with a different owl situation, but I'll tell that story here at the end. But for now, let's do footage from the Denver nest. And I will say the Denver nest was definitely the more like sort of traditional nesting site. Like, it was in a big open space. It's where you would totally expect owls to be, or maybe not expect them to be there, but if you saw there was an owl's nest there, you would say, oh, yeah, this would be a good spot for owls. But I mean, it was in the city, but not like in downtown or anything like that. But it was not like out in the middle of nowhere either. So anyways, this is some of the footage I got when I first found the nest, and then when I kept following back up until the owlets were there. And seeing the owlets was a little difficult. It was you have to go at the right time where they're not sleeping and they're starting to get active, and it's challenging. So anyways, here's some of my photos and some of the video footage from the Denver nest. So at the Denver nest, one of the big tells right off the bat for me was when I found the nest, the mama owl would not leave even during the day. She would sit there and just sleep. And normally owls are, during the day, will go other places. And then they just kind of come back to the nest at night. So that was kind of a key tell right there that I think she had eggs, was that she would not leave that nest. Every time I went there, no matter what time of day, she was on that nest. So that was kind of one of the big tells right off the bat for me. And so the other thing was that I never saw the dad ever around the nest. And as you'll see once I showed the Jeffco nest footage, there's a very stark difference between the two nesting sites. Is that, yeah, the dad was never around. Now, I don't know if that was a deadbeat dad situation or, hey, I'm going to go buy cigs. I'll be right back. And then he never came back. I don't know. I had asked a bunch of other photographers when I was there at the site, like if they had ever seen the dad owl, and everyone said, nope, never seen him. So I don't know if that meant that he was just off hunting during the day or if he just left during the day and maybe he came back at night. But I was observing that nest at different points in the day, morning, afternoon, early evening, and I never saw him once. So I don't know if the mom was just on her own and she would go hunt at night and bring food back for the owlets or what, but I never did see the dad. But like I said, this was definitely the more like traditional nesting site. It was up in the top of this tree in this big open space. There was a lake nearby, and it was sort of surrounded by what I would, I guess, describe as more like prairie-ish. And again, like I said, it was definitely in the city. It's not like out in the middle of nowhere. But I suppose that was probably a good site because there's lots of food available in that area. And finally one afternoon, I got a little glimpse into the owlets. It was pretty chilly that afternoon. And I think there's two total. I could only see the one, but someone else told me that they've seen at least two. So this was a fun place to go, and it wasn't that far away, so it was easy to get to. And it was. And this was the first nesting site of the two that I had discovered. So this was it. And I'm not sure if I'll come back to this nesting site again next year, but it's definitely a good one. And it was not very. It was pretty well known. Like I don't think this was like a top secret site because a couple times that I was there were other photographers there. So I think the secret was out, but I don't see a ton about it online with photos. So maybe it was a little bit more unique than I think. But this was the Denver nesting site. And now the second nesting site that I found was, like I said, very different from the Denver nest. The Jeffco nest was not in a big open space park. It was in a very small park, sort of nestled in between these condominiums. It was a really nice neighborhood, and all the neighbors that would be walking through this little park with their dogs or with their kids would always stop and ask me what I was looking at, or actually they wouldn't ask me what I was looking at. They knew what I was looking at. Just would always tell stories about these owls that nest here every year, and you can see in some of the video it's actually a nesting box. And what had happened was in previous years the owls had nested in that park, but they had nested above someone's porch or someone's balcony, and that can get sort of messy if you can imagine a bunch of owl shit everywhere, and pieces of mice laying on the ground. So the neighborhood did not want to get rid of the owls. They actually called in the Department of Wildlife for Jeffco, and Jeffco said, well, we can build this little nesting box, and hopefully they'll go to it. And owls are very opportunistic, so they'll build a nest if they have to. But if there's something else there, like an owl box, they'll use that because, hey, cool, let's just use this instead. So they've been nesting there for years and years. It's the first, like I said, first time I'd ever really tried to focus in on owls. So this was new to me, but I don't think, again, a very big secret around the Colorado bird photography people. I'm sure lots of people know about this nesting area. But like I said, it was new to me. And I went out there a couple of times and always got good photos. And unlike Denver, the dad owl here was never far away. He was always there. He would either be asleep like during the day in the tree where the box is, or there was this other tree that was maybe 50 yards away that I saw him sleeping there a couple times too. So dad was always around, which again was very different than the Denver nest. And yeah, the hardest part about shooting here was the owlets would be in the little box, which of course is dark and in the shade, so it's hard to get in there. And once they would get up and moving, I had one time where they got up and moving, and you could actually see them pretty well. The light was right, but like tonight was the last night I tried to go out there and get more footage. And by the time they kind of got up and moving, the sun was going down, so the light was really bad, combined with the fact that they're in a box, which is already dark. So that was the challenge of shooting this nest. But yeah, it was really cool. And like I said, just hearing all the stories from the neighbors that live in the area was really cool. And everyone was very nice to me. They weren't mean, like, oh, what's this guy doing here? They love telling stories. And you can see in one of the photos, the mom owl actually only has one eye. And I thought when I first had taken a photo of her, I was just like, oh, well, I just caught her when she was blinking and one eye was closed and the other one was open. But then once I actually, focused in on the shot or zoomed in a little bit, I'm like, wait a minute. No, she doesn't have she doesn't have a second eye. So I did not get the story on what happened there. But yeah, it was a great little spot. And again, not an area I think I will probably revisit. Next year, I probably want to find some new sites, but this was great, and it was super easy to shoot, and it wasn't that far from home, and it was very reliable. I knew the owls would always be there, so that was really helpful. And yeah, that is the Jeffco nest. So I mentioned in the intro that I had some unfinished business with one owl that I was going to tell a story about. So I saved that here for the end. If you've watched this far, thank you so much. So yeah, I was out in this little neighborhood out by Ken Carroll Ranch, which is, I believe that's Lakewood. But again, it's another Jefferson County area. And I had seen a few owl reports online in this little neighborhood. And I thought, oh yeah, I'd head out there and just take a walk around and see if I can find it. And they've got it's very nice houses out there, and they've got this awesome open space with all these red rocks, everything that kind of is in the middle of this neighborhood. And it's a very popular place where kids go play and people go walk their dogs. So I took my dog one night and had my camera and was just kind of out there scouting around to see, what I could find. And sure enough, I came across a couple that were walking their dog, and the husband saw my camera and of course was like, oh, wow, fancy camera. Like, what are you out here looking for? And, again, the neighborhood is a great resource, like the people that live there, because they will always know. The neighborhood, like I always say, the neighborhood always knows. So yeah, if you can just be socially outgoing enough to talk to people and not be creepy, you can get some good information. So I said, oh yeah, I hear there's some owls that live out around here. And yeah, I'm just out here looking around. And the wife was kind of like, she didn't really roll her eyes, but she kind of had that look like, oh boy. And the husband was like, you're looking for the owl? And I was like, I'm looking for owls, not the owl. And he's like, oh, no. There's only one owl that lives out around here. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess it is the owl. And I'm like, okay, well, what do you know? And he's like, well, what I know is it's the biggest damn owl you've ever seen. And I was like, okay, cool. That's good. Good information. And he's like, yeah, just perches around here, chases off cats. You got to be real careful around this owl. And I was like, oh, whoa, killer owl. Okay. Interesting. I'm like, okay, well, so you see it around here, like in this park? And he's like, well, every once in a while it comes to this park, but it doesn't live here. It actually lives down in this other area. You got to go check out. And so he told me that, the owl actually lived back down by the stables. And there's a tree right there by the entrance of the stables. It's this pine tree. You can't miss it. he lives in that tree. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good tip. That's a good tip. See, the neighborhood always knows. So I finished walking around the little area that I was in, and I didn't see any owls. And I thought, well, on my way out of here, I guess I better go check. So I better go check the stables. And so I followed his little direction and went back out and around. And sure enough, there's a bunch of like horse stables. Like I said, it's a very well-to-do neighborhood. Any neighborhood that has its own horse stables, it's usually out of my league. So, anyways, I pulled down this little dirt road where these stables are, and he had said, it's in this pine tree, and it's the only pine tree along this little road, so you can't miss it. And sure enough, there's a big, tall pine tree right where he said it would be. And so I was like, oh, well, this must be it. So I was pulling down this little dirt road, and as I got near the pine tree, I kind of was, looking out my window up into the tree to see if I, saw anything. And sure enough, there was a gigantic nest up in the about 3/4 of the way up this pine tree. And it's a pine tree, so it's still got all of its, needles, and it's very well concealed. So if you were just driving by and you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't see it. So I was like, oh, well, there it is. Yeah, okay, let me get out and see what we got here. So I get out, and I walk over to this tree, and I'm looking up, and like I said, there's a gigantic nest, and but no owl was home. So I thought, wow, well, this has got to be it. And I mean, the nest was big enough that I'm convinced it was an owl's nest. And I was like, well, interesting. And as I was kind of looking up there, all of a sudden, from behind me, I just hear someone say, hey, can I help you? And it kind of startled me, and I turned around, and it was a guy who worked at the stables. And so I'm sure he had looked out the window and sees me, like looking up in his tree, like, what the hell is this guy doing? So he came out to see what I was doing, and I played it off real cool. I was like, oh, yeah, well, I've got some friends that live up the road, some friends that I just met, and they told me that there might be an owl that lives down around here. And the guy was like, oh, you're looking for the owl? And I'm like, oh, here we go. It's the owl again. And I was like, yeah, I heard he lives maybe in this tree. And I was just checking it out. And the guy was like, well, I don't know if he lives in that tree per se. I think he just kind of lives all over the place around this neighborhood. But here's one thing I will tell you. It is the biggest owl you've ever seen. And I was like, oh, here we go again. This is a gigantic owl. And he's like, yeah, I think most of the kids in this neighborhood are actually scared of it. Okay. So it's a big, scary owl that scares children and swoops in and goes after cats. And, that's when it kind of dawned on me that I was hearing, granted it was just from two separate people, but I was sort of hearing this neighborhood's sort of urban myth about this, or urban legend about this gigantic owl. And I just sort of pictured that, like, everyone in this neighborhood has seen this owl or heard about the owl and sort of has their own little story about the owl. And I think that's super cool. And the other funny thing about it was, he mentioned, oh, it's a big owl. And I was like, oh, he's a real Brutus, huh? And the guy was like, Brutus. Yes, I like that as a name for the owl. So I've nicknamed the owl Brutus. Brutus of Ken Carroll Ranch. And I have not found him yet. I've been out there probably 4 or 5 times. And again, I like going at just different parts of the day just to see. I like going, obviously, before sunset is like when owls are most active. So I've been out there a couple times to try to find Brutus. And I've been back to the nest, and every time it's been empty. So I don't know if he's actually using that nest or not, or if that's an old nest that's now abandoned or what. But I need to find Brutus. That is my unfinished business. So I will be going out to Ken Carroll Ranch until I find him. So even though I'm sort of done with owls for right now as my main focus, I will still be trying to track down Brutus. And when I do, I will make a video about it. Or I will at least post footage of Brutus. I know that when I do find him, he's probably going to be just a normal-sized owl. And that all the stories, the tales are probably exaggerated to some extent. And yeah, but I just thought that was another really cool part of doing this project, was getting out in these little neighborhoods and talking to people and hearing their stories about the owls. Because, like I said, everyone in the neighborhood will know. And they'll know the history, and they'll know the stories, and they'll know why some owls only have one eye, and why some owls live where they do, and when they come and go, and what time of the year. So it's super cool. And that's been the unexpected part of this project that has really been awesome to me. I love hearing these stories. So anyways, that is the tale of Brutus and the unfinished business. And yeah, I also will, I guess I'll just wrap this up by saying that yeah, I'm definitely taking my focus now off the owls. And we're in early spring. It's like getting to be like early to mid-April when I'm recording this. And my focus now is going to be on fox and fox kits, because I saw fox and fox kits last April, and I thought it made really good photos. So that is going to be sort of my next project for the spring. And then once we get into May and June, I will probably switch over into storm chasing mode. And actually have another exciting part about storm chasing this year, is that I will be down in Arizona for the monsoon. So I will be down there trying to get some cool lightning and some cool desert storm stuff. So I'm really excited about that. That kind of just came together here in the past couple days. So I'm looking forward to that. And then, of course, I am going to Denali in August. So I will be going to Alaska for photography in the end of August into September. And then in October, I would like to try to get out to California to go see Dan and Erica and their new baby, which will be born in the beginning of June. And I'd also like to go see the whale migration on the central coast of California. So that's sort of my upcoming plans. So we've got a mix of wildlife and storm stuff. So, but yeah, I think the next video coming up will either be of some foxes or maybe of Brutus. So hopefully you'll stick around, and yeah, I will get stuff posted as I get it. So thanks for watching.